I just did something that I haven't done intentionally more than a handful of times in the last 11 years since my first child was born. I'm a big book lover, but I know as a parent of children who don't sleep very well how important it is for me to sleep when they are sleeping, even now at 11 and 7 years old. But last night I could not help myself. I stayed up all night reading the last book in this multi author series, The Sacrificed Hearts. Do I regret it? No. Am I going to pay for it? Definitely. We'll see how well my cups of tea keep me going until the end of my very, very busy and overbooked day that I have today. Before I get into this series, The Sacrificed Hearts, I want to introduce myself. I am Chantel. I am the face behind the channel Fairly Bookish. You can find me on all the popular social media channels. I have accounts on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook. I know there is some concern about the Clock app vanishing at the end of the year. I don't know if that will happen or not, but I am regularly on Instagram and YouTube as well. So find a few places that you want to follow along and let me know where you came from, and I will probably follow you back. So this series is a 6-book series. It has 6 well-seasoned authors. They've all released many other books successfully. They are very comfortable in their niches, and they are almost all people who I have read before. But as I have said, I love multi-author series because almost without fail, it introduces me to somebody I've maybe seen around but haven't tried yet, and gives me a good reason to try them out. And for me in this series, the person that I had never read before was Everly Hayward in the Salt and Sacrifice book. I had seen her books around, or her as an author around, but I hadn't got around to reading any because my TBR is always growing and is always really long, and I can only read so fast even if I am a speed reader. So I have already talked about how much I love multi-author series, and the reason is it's a great way to get introduced to new writers who you may have heard of or you may not have heard of, and give you a chance to kind of sample their work and see if they're somebody you want to read more of. There has been only a couple times when I haven't immediately gone to that writer's page and bookmarked them to keep an eye on their work, because most of these authors are just so good at hooking you with their writing in these books that you just need to read more. The new to me author in this series was the book of Pearls of Salt and Sacrifice by Everly Hayward. I had seen her name around, but I had never looked into her books, and this was an excellent way for me to get to know her writing style, and I already am keeping an eye on her profile to see when she's releasing the book that this one right here leads into, because I just know it's going to be so good. Another perk about these multi-authored but not related stories is you can read in any order. So when I heard about this series, I was really excited, and I immediately had set an alert on my phone. So as soon as Tara Grace's released on March 8, I grabbed it and started reading it in between my activities for that day. But I was very lucky to receive an advanced reader's copy of Mary Meckham's book, Assassins of Fire and Sacrifice. So after I read The Mountain of Dragons and Sacrifice, I immediately started Mary Meckham's book and then read the others as they released along the way. I don't think I can pick a favorite in this series. Each one is so different. They take a vastly different approaches on what is a monster and what is a sacrifice, and all of them were delightful stories. There were elements of each one that just really stuck with me and made me laugh. The banter in Mary Meckham's is just perfection, but the way that the characters in each of these books interact with each other is just delightful. I loved how strong and stubborn and self-sufficient the female character in the Pearls of Salt and Sacrifice was. I loved how the I don't want to give away the story, but I loved how the character that she ends up with was very gentle and respectful, but also willing to take risks on her behalf, even if she was not reciprocative to his feelings, or she didn't want to admit that she was, because she felt like duty bound to follow this specific course of action. And I cannot wait to see what happens with this prince in the story, because the story didn't paint him in a very great light. However, it insinuates that he isn't who we think he is. So I'm really curious about that, and that is definitely rolling around in my mind. I loved Deborah Grace White's because I really liked seeing the growth and development of the male main character who we met in her Singer series. And I loved the way that the woman, the female main character, was just so forgiving and understanding and cheerful, just like unendingly happy, and how that is what perhaps this man needed to help him kind of get a grip on himself and stop punishing himself for a mistake in his past. Now, I've already done a review on the Assassins of Fire and Sacrifice, as well as the Mountains of Dragons and Sacrifice, and I want to touch on the other two books in this series that I haven't said yet. That is The Mask of Deception and Sacrifice. This one had a multi-personality disorder, which was actually, I believe, a curse attached to this mask, as well as sort of Phantom of the Opera vibes. It was a really fascinating story. At first, it was challenging for me to kind of understand the dual personality point of view, but I thought it was really well done, and I really loved how in the end the chance that this female main character took on the man who everybody believed was a monster was what he needed to be able to overcome this curse that he was suffering with, and how he, even though he was raised in an environment that was completely terrible, that he was able to be a better person and a stronger person and make choices that really helped his kingdom, which was also her kingdom. And then we have the one I stayed up all night to read, and that was this Labyrinth of Lies and Sacrifice. This one started out right from the first few sentences at a fast pace. Like this, it starts with the character racing away through town, trying not to get caught. And you really don't get to catch your breath until the last chapter. One thing after another happens. It's very suspenseful. It's a little bit scary in some ways, but it is just this amazing weave of circumstances and chances that aren't really chances, and overcoming an evil plot, and overcoming fear, and recognizing that truth does set you free. And I feel like that was the theme of that whole book, is that the truth is what's going to set these people who are in a magical prison free. And how that plays out, you'll have to read the book to see, but it was just so intriguing that I couldn't stop reading it. And as a bookworm, that's not necessarily unusual that I don't want to stop, but it is a little unusual that I allow myself to not have the self-control to stop, and I just couldn't. I had to see how this one ended. So if you haven't read this series, The Sacrificed Hearts, and you are looking for a series to binge on, this is the one. Like this is the one this year that I was the most excited about. Of course, there could be more coming up that I don't know about yet, but this is the one that I've been waiting for, and it did not disappoint me at all. Any of these books in any order are absolutely bingeable, but if you read one, you're going to want to read them all. So make sure they're all on your TBR. They are all available on Kindle Unlimited or through even the author's websites, depending on how you like to read your books. And the authors just released this surprise information that these books are going to be audiobooks. So if you like listening to your books instead of reading them, or you need to as you commute or do other kinds of activities, this is the one that's coming out first, I believe, in the end of May, and the others will have separate and varied release dates depending on the recorder's, the narrator's schedule. So check them out, and as always, remember to give a thumbs up and a like to these authors. They deserve it. They work really hard and they have earned our support.